Yo, what up, everyone? Welcome back to Just a Minute. This is episode number 19. As always, I'm your HoopSeen host, Austin Smith. My partner in crime, who I'm always joined with, is our editor-in-chief here at HoopSeen.com, Mr. Justin Young. JY, we're back in the building. One episode away from number 20. Man, we keep rolling week by week. Talk to us, JY. How you feeling today?
I'm great, man. We're in the thick of it now. We got guys traveling all over the country. We got guys committing. We got new rankings. We got, visits. It's my favorite time of the year on the recruiting part of things when we're not playing the games. I love this time of year. It's why I enjoy being in the recruiting scene as long as I've been here. So it's my favorite time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can agree with that, man, because commitment season, we get basketball grassroots gets this tricky season right now where there's no actual real basketball being played. But I love this part of the year, too, because there's still a lot of content and still news out there noteworthy of us paying attention to commitments that turn into, players, whether we ultimately end up in the future, how it affects other prospects in the recruiting scale. So it's a lot going on. And you mentioned commitments. Let me ask you this quick question first, JY. When you hear commitments from different players, what goes into your mind about players making that decision to kind of commit early at this part of the year before the high school season starts?
Like, what's their thought process?
Yeah, the thought process, I guess, if you had a general in mind, what do you think?
Yeah, more than ever, it's been where can I play right away? Okay. Like, that's the number one thing that, it's been interesting over the course of time where for a while there it was all about development, like who can develop my game. That still is a part of it. But as we see the transfer list grow and grow and grow, one of the reasons why guys leave is because they don't play as much as they think that they should be playing. Yeah. And so for talking to any player now, like what's the thing that you're looking for in a college? I want to play right away. I think development's probably close behind it. I think location is important to some, but maybe not as important as it ever used to be because one, the world shrunk down because of technology. Two, guys I think are so used to now traveling all over the place to play travel basketball. There's a lot of what have you done for me now in the moment stuff. And so guys are moving around. So playing right away, I think is the first and foremost thing that guys are looking for when they're looking for a school. And that I think is the number one thing as they're looking through their checklist and looking through the schools. That I think is by far the number one leader in the clubhouse and the decision-making process.
Got it. And that's something I've been tending to take note of too, that key phrase, like where can I play right away? Because, with everything going on, NIL, players trying to turn pro, all this stuff, that seems to be the common theme behind a lot of these prospects. Where can I play? Where can I start my story, pronto, and get my career going from there? Okay.
Well, that's why my follow-up question to that, when a player says that is, okay, cool. You want to play right away. So what value can you as a player bring to the table that allows you to be on the floor and play right away? Right. And so that part's interesting to ask that follow-up question, like, oh, well, I feel like I'm a great glue guy. If you're a great glue guy, you aren't playing on the floor probably right away. Like you got to be a dude that can do something that's really different comparative to everybody else. And again, one of our themes here on the show is apples to apples. And so if you're looking at guys, if I'm a school that's looking at point guards, what's my differential value as a prospect that's going to allow me to be on the floor and supersede somebody that's already there in that town that I'm looking at going to? And so to me, that's always the most important thing. If you're going to be a freshman or if you're going to be a new player to a school and you want to play right away, well, then what are you doing to help that team right away to be able to play and be on the floor? So it's interesting to see the dynamic shift a little bit. Yeah.
Love that insight, man. That's great stuff to take note of. And again, if you're tuning into the show and you're following these prospects, keep that in mind when you're following these guys and where they pick their schools. Think about, okay, hey, how would player A fit into the culture and play at school A? How would player B, how's he going to look a couple of years down the line? Is he a guy that comes in and steps in right away? Keep that in mind, man, as we break down some of these commitments. And so let's go through some right now. Yeah. Let's talk about Isaac Trout. I think it's his last name. Trout. Yep. Let's talk about him and his commitment to Virginia. JY, what's your thought process and what are you taking away from his commitment to go into play?
I think anytime Virginia lands a commitment, you need to pay attention to it because there's a specific type of player that we've seen Tony Bennett, his staff go after. Okay. They're really particular on who they offer. They're really particular on who they bring in. They don't recruit a shotgun approach. They're very pointed to who they go after. And so you hear of a guy in Isaac Trout who's from Nebraska, Grand Isle, Nebraska, right smack dab in the middle of America. Ironically enough, I actually spent my birthday in Grand Isle, Nebraska last year. at a hotel. So I was like, oh, I know that city. I've been there. It's smack dab right in the middle. I was doing a road trip. And I didn't even know they had basketball that was there. I think remember Danny Woodhead that played for the Patriots back in the day? I think he's from there as well. So now we've got another guy, Isaac Trout, that's going to be going out to Charlottesville, but a big time shooter. Yeah. And so like if you've seen the way that they play, I think he makes a lot of sense, particularly when you pair him with the guy that we saw a lot on our circuit this year on the Grassroots Basketball Association circuit with Leon Bond, a guy that just got commitment 2-3 weeks ago. And now you pair him with a guy like Isaac. Isaac to me is one of the best shooters in the class, and he's got great size. He can play inside, he can play outside. He's a great pick and pop guy. And so the way that they play at Virginia, it's systematic. We know that, a lot of movement, a lot of motion. And so you get a guy that can slide out there to that three-point line that can knock down the shot. I think this is a really important commitment for them based on the personnel they already have. And now you pair him with a guy like Leon Bond, who's interchangeable, who can do a lot of switches, who's a great athlete, who can also play down low. I think together those two guys make a lot of sense for what Virginia's doing. It may not. This wasn't a week where I think we had big, earth-shattering commitments across the country. But I think this one, when you look at the long term and you look at the ACC, you look where Virginia stacks in this class, this is a really important one. I think when you look back on this class, you go, oh, that was a really significant fit for what the Virginia Cavaliers do.
Yeah, and you talked about Tony Bennett and how the style he plays. He gets guys in and he develops them. These guys, they stay a couple of years, but then they make that deep playoff run in March Madness that you consistently see year in and year out. So Isaac, I think, like you just said, Isaac's shooting ability, I think he'll fit right into that offensive flow that Tony Bennett has and the culture they got up there in Virginia.
Well, it goes back to what we just talked about. What differential value can you bring to the table right out of the gate? And he is a tremendous, tremendous shooter and a guy that's going to hit a shot on the road in ACC play that you're like, oh, okay, I'm glad he's on our team if you're a UVA fan.
Good deal. Isaac Trout, got to add him to the board now, man. Congrats to Isaac and his commitment to Virginia. Let's keep it moving, JY. Let's talk about Rowan Brumbaugh heading to Northwestern. Talk to us about Rowan.
Yeah, he's one of the top point guards in the country, big guard, 6'4". I think more importantly, Northwestern landing a guy like him, a top 150 guy across the country, is really significant. Northwestern, I think since Chris Collins has been there, has done a tremendous job of being in the mix for players that they maybe normally haven't been able to be in the mix for. So now you go up to, he's an academic kid up in the Northeast. And so you're up in Patriot land, you're around all these great, prep schools, and you're around all these great academic institutions, some Ivy League schools. So for Northwestern to go up in that area and snag Rowan Brumbaugh, I think was really significant. A 6'4" guard. And we've seen different guys like Kellen Grady was a kid that was from that area, went down to Davidson, has had a tremendous career down the Charlotte area, was a significant, probably one of the most significant impact players that Davidson's pulled in since Steph Curry. And so he had a really similar recruitment. I think Rowan Brumbaugh, I don't know if he's quite the player that Kellen Grady was coming out of high school, but the significance of a guy like him from where he comes from to go to Northwestern was a significant win for Chris Collins and the Wildcat staff to land a player like him that's going to be playing there in the Chicagoland area.
Good deal. Good deal. Yeah. And, the thing about Northwestern, man, Northwestern's a high academic school as well, man, and like you said, to be able to get a top 150 guy like Rowan is big for their staff. And I think he'll be a guy that add a lot of value to their program too.
Yeah, no question.
So a good snag for them. All right, moving along, JY, here's another one. We got Ben Vanderwaal. I think it's how you pronounce his name, I believe. So I'm headed to Furman. Let's talk about Ben, JY.
Well, Furman is a program that's a non-major in the SoCon that wins 20+ games every year. And one of the reasons why they do that is because they land guys like Ben Vanderwaal, 6'7", 6'8". Again, very similar to Isaac Trout earlier. Interchangeable forward, significant pickup for the Paladins. There's a reason why those guys are competitive and one of the most competitive mid-major leagues in college basketball. Yeah. And Bob Ritchie and his staff has done a tremendous job of going to the Midwest. They've had great players from the state of Ohio, and now you got to go up into the city of Illinois, and you're pulling guys into that area that fit their style of play and their system really well. He visited Bucknell last week. I think he had a couple visits maybe coming up that he obviously is not going to take now because he's committed. But I think it's important when you look at the overall picture of college basketball and why we have teams that consistently win 20+ wins every year that are postseason contenders is because they recruit really, really well. And Bob Ritchie and his staff has done a tremendous job of recruiting guys that are not shoe-sponsored guys, they find guys that are winners, and Vanderwaal fits their profile of the type of player that they've been able to pull into Greenville now for the last, I don't know how long Bob's been the head coach there now. I think maybe going on year 4 or 5. But there's a reason why those programs are successful, is because they identify talent that fit their need. They recruit that talent and they get them to come to campus out of an area. Those are significant wins in the recruiting landscape. And more importantly, I think those are guys that you never see on a transfer list either, because they've identified and they've developed within that program. Really significant impact. And again, we won't know it here today in the end of August in 2021, but I guarantee you in probably February of 23, that a commitment like Ben Vanderwaal is a commitment you look back and go, gosh, that was a huge commitment on the recruiting front. And that's where those are the long plays that in recruiting that I really like to follow. So as we go through these commitments of the week here on Just a Minute, I always want to make sure that we include a really solid or really important mid-major commitment. I think this one certainly fits the bill for that as well.
Love it, Jay. And it connects back to what we said earlier about players and making these commitments, making that decision that allows them to grow and develop. And Ben is, like you said, you talk about looking at down the line in February 2023, you talk about an impact player that could really help Furman come the postseason run. He could be a guy that could have that impact, like you just said. And again, it's all about fit. You know, players making that decision to go to the school that's best for them, the school that will help them develop as well, which is a major key, because that development piece ultimately it plays a factor. If you're not like a highly touted guy, if you're a prospect that maybe it's on the radar or hasn't, or that's a mid-major level prospect, that's your opportunity to pick the right school that can really boost your entire career going forward. So I love that. And I love hearing what you said about Ben and going to Furman and how that school could possibly help him make that big transformation as a player and then help him in the long run.
No question about it.
Yeah. So JY, one thing we make sure we want to do, we kind of talked about but our national rankings for the class of 2022, our top 100 rankings in that class. And what we want to do now is kind of pivot for a second and let's start diving even deeper and looking at things position based. And we know in the class of 2022, the point guards got a good group of point guards. Got some guys here that stand out on the list. So if you don't mind, man, I said let's go through that for a second. Let's look at some of these top point guards in that 2022 list. So let's start off with Nick Smith. We know there's some schools he's going to be visiting soon. Tell us a little bit about Nick and what he's got going on currently.
Yeah, huge July. I watched a ton of film from him from the Peach Jam. He's out of Arkansas. Nick Smith, I think, really was a guy that was on the radar, but I saw enough of him at a really huge stage. Talked to a lot of NBA guys that are really intrigued. Great size, a dynamic playmaking ability. This class for point guards has been really interesting for me because I think we have a lot of combo guards. I think we have a lot of point guards. I'm not really sure like who is the guy in that class. I think Nick Smith, and talking to a lot of NBA guys, were really intrigued by him, probably the most long-term. And now we've seen his recruitment kind of reflect that uniqueness of what his game is. Obviously, Arkansas is going to be involved. He's going to take an official visit there. Anytime you have a guy from the state of Arkansas, the Razorbacks do a tremendous job, no matter who the coach is, to keep him close to home and go to Fayetteville. But now you see a program like Kentucky, a school that's been tremendous with John Calipari and point guards. I think you could argue that he's been probably one of the best point guard pro coaches that we've seen in college basketball over the last 20 years. And so obviously it makes a ton of sense for them to get involved. Big guard. Also, Oklahoma is involved as well. And so really close to where he's from in Little Rock. So Nick Smith, it was a hard choice because I wasn't really sure. I think there are a lot of guys that could compete for that very top spot. Again, point guards, combo guards, I'm not sure. I think everybody's a combo guard now if you're a guard. But from a point guard standpoint, he was our number one guy overall in the class of 22 at the position. I think he checks in at 16 overall, if I'm not mistaken, in our list. So if that tells you a little bit about the quality of the point guard,
right?
Number 16 in the overall rankings, but the number one point guard. So it's an interesting. I think we have a lot of wings, a lot of scorers, but maybe not a lot of I hate the word pure point guard because I'm not even sure what that means anymore. And I'm not even sure like that type of point guard has the value like he once did. But Nick Smith, certainly dynamic enough. Love his size. Love big point guards. Where he's a guy number 16 overall, I believe, again, but our number one point guard overall in the class of 22.
And you know what you mentioned, JY, this is just the little basketball nerd in me coming out, I guess, but you talked about how point guards, if you're number 16 ranked, if you're number 16 best ranked player, but you're number one point guard, where you fit in the total poll as far as top prospects. And over the years, the better player, point guards really haven't dominated that top spot for the past few years. You've seen the bigger wings and bigger forwards like you talked about. And that's always something that I've keyed in on about how that point guard position, pure points or even combo guards like we see, where they get ranked in the totem pole and how that's been over the past few years. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the game's evolved where like look at Russell Westbrook, okay? Like, he's a point guard. There's no denying that, but he's also an elite scorer.
Yeah.
He's such a dynamic guy where you take and like, look at John Wall, look at De'Aaron Fox, like really like point guards still, nonetheless, Damian Lillard, like Chris Paul, obviously I watched a lot of him this year. Mm-hmm. Name me another guy in the NBA that has the real point guard value that Chris Paul had to a team. Not many.
Yeah.
Right. And so not many. And so now we're seeing more dynamic guys like LeBron and like these big guards or big wings or, multi-positional guys where that point guard, I think the lines get blurred a lot as to what that is. Like, Mike Conley 10 years ago, that style of game maybe had more value than the Mike Conley. Now he's had injuries and he's older and whatever, but like Kyle Lowry and those types of guys are almost moving and pivoting more to a guy like, Dame Lillard and even Steph Curry for that matter, and guys that can score that are more dynamic. So I think as the game changes, I think that even look at a guy like Keontae George, who we'll talk about probably next week, combo guard or more of a scorer as opposed to a point guard. And so like Keontae George, I've talked to him about him being more like Bradley Beal, or maybe he's more like Eric Gordon, who at the time we had Eric Gordon top 5 in the country, and one of the most dynamic scorers that we had. It was a killer. So that position has just evolved a lot where the term point guard, we have some other guys on this list that we'll talk about that fall into that. But just the position's evolved quite a bit.
Wow. Yeah, man, it's crazy, man. Like you mentioned CP3, Steve Nash, you talk about pure origin. You just don't see it as much anymore.
Well, to give you some context, sorry, like I'm just looking at my notes here. Like we have 14 guys, 14 point guards in our top 100. We have 19 shooting guards. And we have 12 combo guards. So like, I think there's more of a guy that's a more of a crossover scoring point guard than there is a real point guard. So whatever a real point guard is anymore.
Man, the game is changing, JY. The game is changing. All right, let's keep going down this list we got, brother. Let's talk about Jaden Bradley. Okay, we've got Florida State on the table. Gonzaga, already been to UNC, going to Bama, Michigan. Let's talk about his recruitment, man.
Yeah, so he is going to be going to Florida State this weekend. Huge official visit weekend for them. They got Cam Coran also going to be in town for a big game there in Tallahassee. When Gonzaga gets involved with a kid on the other side of the country, they do a pretty good job of landing international guys. They do a tremendous job owning the West Coast. And so for a program like Gonzaga, we've already seen them go after a guy like Anthony Black. Now we're seeing them get involved with Jaden Bradley. I mean, that tells you a lot about the value that he brings to the table. A North Carolina guy, a guy that we've watched a ton. Came up through the Cannon School. Our Justin Byerly's been all over him for the last, 3 years now. Big guard. He kind of went up and down. IMG is an interesting program because he was playing up, we weren't playing up, but like he was an underclassman on a really upperclassman heavy team at IMG. And, he was the point guard on that team where he didn't have to score. I saw him a lot in national stuff where my opinion, I kind of went up and down on him. He had a pretty good travel season, up and down USA Basketball. But again, you mix in the size, you mix in his value that he brings to the table. Anybody that's going to be coming out of IMG, they're going to be physically able to ready to play right out of the gate. So a guy like Jaden Bradley, I take that into consideration. Going back to what we talked about earlier, your value right away as a freshman, can you be on the floor? I think that IMG experience, even going back to the Cannon School, like his head school coach did a great job of playing just about anybody they could. And now physically you add that element into it. There's a reason why Florida State, a program that, as we know, has developed as many pros as any of the major, blue bloods that there is in the country, and Gonzaga. And then of course, you've got, Alabama. Who else did I talk about? North Carolina, and then Michigan. Some of the heavy hitters in recruiting are in there, but number 2, you can make an argument that he could, supersede Nick on the rankings with this high school season coming up. So that's certainly a position battle that I'm watching really closely as we go into the Scholastic, season. Is Jaden Bradley going to go back up to that number 1 spot in the overall position?
Position battle, man. I love that. Like you can say that now with confidence because schools are getting back to kind of their normal schedules of the past, and you'll see IMG do some traveling. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's going to get real, man. It's going to get real. Okay.
But that's the interesting thing with this list, and that because we go into number 3 here with Pop Isaac.
Yep. Go ahead. Yeah, for sure.
But like Pop is that type of guard whose flavor is more Chris Paul as opposed to him being Dame Lillard,
right?
Where he's really more comfortable on being the guy that he can get in those position battles. Yeah. But he's a great passer. I don't think he has a brake on his car at all because he doesn't know how to slow down. He just plays so hard. He plays so fast, but he's more comfortable probably being a passer, a driver, and a passer than he is as a scorer. That's not to say that he can't be, because he is. He's an absolute dog when it comes to those scores. Highly competitive kid. I can't deny competitiveness. Right. And like I wrote that this week. You know, I was writing some scouting reports as I usually do in August. It's a chance for me to kind of catch up. And I wrote, if you don't have competitive in your scouting report, reevaluate some stuff. Yeah. And I've never had to worry about that with Pop Isaacs ever. Ever. And so the Vegas native who was at Wasatch Academy is going back to Las Vegas this year for a Scholastic. He's got 4 down to 4, at least as of right now. Arizona State, UNLV, which is the program, you know, his hometown school, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma State, programs that value toughness and programs that value a guy that know how to run a team. So Pop Isaac comes in number 3 overall in our point guard rankings.
Pop Isaac, number 3. Okay, let's keep it moving, JY. Number 4, let's talk about Seth Trimble, headed to North Carolina. Man, I enjoy getting a chance to watch him.
You talk about him. You've seen him probably more than me.
Man, listen, I like Seth, man. You like guys that compete and guys that win and guys that steer the ship. Big guard, physical, no problem attacking, getting downhill to the basket, sets his teammates up very well. In my opinion, the ultimate leader, man. You talk about UNC and having the confidence, not just to go to UNC, but, you know, when you become a point guard in Chapel Hill, you got to really be able to handle the reins. And, you know, we've seen Carolina over the years consistently be a program where, hey, if they got a good floor general, you know, things will tend to go pretty well. And you know, Seth Trimble, given his back history that he had this year with Phenom U, which again, I was totally impressed with what I saw from him. I think he's a big fit for Carolina. I think that he'll fit in and be able to take that leadership role that we've seen guys, you know, later in their careers do. You talk about like guys like Marcus Page. You know, there's so many point guards. You can go on and on and on about Joel Berry, guys that, you know, in their 3rd, 4th year, they seem to have control of that entire team and really do well in the ACC play. So I'm excited for Seth Trimble, man. I think that he can be another point guard that comes in, and as he continues to progress with time, see another guard at USC will produce that'll do well come his upperclassmen years. So.
You know what's interesting about him? You know how many texts I got from coaches that are going to be coaching against him in the ACC about how good he is? Like a lot. Like a lot of guys like, man, like, because, you know, he played really, really well with us in the spring when coaches couldn't be out. We wrote about him. We had tons of video. Like, we were like, man, this guy's like really, really talented. Yeah. And I had a lot of coaches hit me back up. Like, you're right, man. This guy's an absolute killer. Guy can absolutely go. Again, going back to that competitiveness, right. I think that competitiveness is going to shine forth. And more importantly, as Hubert Davis starts his new, you know, regime or whatever you want to call it there in Chapel Hill, it's going to be really important to build with guys that play with a certain style of play. And he's the guy. He's the guy.
Yeah, he's a great fit for my opinion for Coach Davis's first year. You got to get a guy if you bring him. That's a good piece of the half. All right, let's talk about Dylan Andrews headed to UCLA. JY, what do you like about him?
Yeah, so a Southern California kid moving out here to Phoenix and playing at AZ Compass Prep, and we've seen him a lot. We'll probably be writing about him a lot. I'll probably be seeing him in the next couple of weeks. I head over there to AZ Compass Prep for some open gyms. But love him. And again, I love guards with big size. I love guys that are 6'2" or taller, 6'3" or taller. That are point guard. I think he fits into that. I love the way I've known Mick Cronin for a really long time. I know the style of guard that he likes to have. You get a toughness with him, with Dylan Andrews from a competitive. There's a theme here with our guys on this list. Highly competitive guys. Fits the mold for what UCLA does. A super important commitment for them to get a Southern California guy. We saw what type of season Ty Washington had last year with AZ Compass Prep. We know they're going to play a gauntlet of a schedule. They're going to play every heavy hitter they can play. Yeah. So we're going to see a lot of growth this year with Dylan Andrews and the type of player that he is now and the type of player that he's going to finish as come April of 2022 as we get prepared. So I really like him. I like a lot of his intangibles. I like the physicality. Again, if you're a big guard, I'm probably going to err on your side more than I am a guy that's a small guard. That's just my personal preference. I tend to pick the, cookies and cream ice cream in the thing. but my wife may like the strawberry, but I like, and so like, you like what you like, you know what I mean? And for me, I like big guards, and I'm always going to lean more towards them. And Dylan Andrews is certainly a guy that I can't wait to see more of this year with AZ Compass Prep.
Good deal. Yeah, we know. Listen, let me tell y'all out there now. If you're in Phoenix and you go to any Arizona Compass Prep game in the area, you're gonna run into Justin Young. All right. He's completely abandoned us in Georgia. He's completely team Arizona now, man. So you'll see.
Listen, hey, we've got, we were doing our state rankings as well, and Arizona's deep, and now we've got, Dream City Christian is a school with Shaden Sharp, our #1 overall player. Hillcrest Prep is a school that everybody knows about, where you had Mike Foster that was there. DeAndre Ayton's played there. So we've got a lot of prep schools out here in Arizona that are really, really loading up. So I'll be seeing everybody. But you'll see me back east too, man. Don't worry about it. We're working on that. You must have heard my phone call earlier with my guy, Justin Byerly. I said, hey, let's start to look at our scholastic schedule and figure out where we're going. You might be even in the gym, like at your home court in McKeecher, and you're like, JY, what are you doing here? You never know where these eyes are going to show up.
Listen, man, you've established strong roots in Phoenix, bro. You're gonna be there. Like the facility, you'll be there. I know you will. I'm not gonna even ask you where you're going. I'm gonna look at the highlight tapes and look for your face. That's what I'm gonna do. That's the easiest thing to do.
Well, here's a tip. If it's gonna be snowing in the scholastic season, I will not be there. That much I do know. That's always been my #1 rule. So if I can still wear shorts in the basketball season in the wintertime, I'm probably going to be wherever that is.
Okay, that's fair. I'll give you that. I will give you that, my brother. All right, here we go, man. Last thing for today's episode. And I like this segment. I think this segment is going to keep getting a lot of traction. Let's talk about visitor of the weekend. Okay. Jackson Kohler. Got it. I think, listen, arguably best footwork. Okay. We talked about this, and a man has an array of post moves and drop steps and hooks and fades, and he gets better and better every time I see a clip of him or see a film of him. Talk to us about his visits that come up this weekend.
Well, there's so many visits, and we'll have it this week on Fast Break Friday. So make sure you log on to HoopSeen Friday morning to see where everybody's going. It's a series that we launched, I don't know how many years ago. I think I was doing it back at the old.com back in the day, but there's so many options. Like, just to nail down one was difficult, but I want to ride the wave that Jackson Kohler's on right now. He had a tremendous showing at the Pangos Festival over the weekend in Las Vegas. He had 53 points, I think 20-something rebounds in a game. Now it's an all-star game, and those stats can be inflated a little bit. But to your point, tremendous big man. And when you look at where he's going to take a visit to, he's going to be at Iowa. And who just had one of the best, careers that we've ever seen, Luke Garza. And Jackson Kohler, I think, is such a smart guy for them to target for the way that they play. Yeah. And the way that they've been able to develop Luka Garza now playing. I think he's going to be a really smart player for them to add for the Detroit Pistons. I actually love that pick for them. They help get in there, be a really important player for them, paired with Isaiah Stewart down the road. But Jackson Kohler to Iowa visiting there for his first official visit makes so much sense. That's why I love it. I love that the Hawkeyes are going after him. He's got a full slate of visits, taking 5 visits, but this is the first one from a potential fit point of view. Again, going back to what can you do to play right away? That system designed really, really well for a guy like Jackson Kohler, an old school guy that shines below the rim. And I mean that in the most complimentary way. There's a lot of pieces to his game that Kevin Love is one of the best guys I've ever seen at the prep level. Like, truly incredible high school player. And Jackson, sometimes when I watch him, reminds me a lot of what Kevin did when he was in high school. And so, there's a lot of comparisons there, I think, of some of the skill set that they both bring to the table. So really like Jackson Kohler this weekend from Iowa, or to Iowa. The Utah big man now is transferred down to Southern California Academy, as a team, again, another program I'm going to see a ton of this year. But that's an important one. But that being said, if you've made it this far in just a minute, make sure you go to hoopseen.com this weekend. We're going to have a huge story on all the visitors that are going of note from all over the country. So if you do happen to have a tip on a guy that's visiting, again, I love mid-major visits as well. Shoot me a DM at Justin D. Young on Twitter, or at HoopSeen, or let Austin know, whomever it may be. But visits, we want to know who's visiting and who's visiting where, as we keep up with all that every Friday on hoopseen.com.
Yes, sir. Y'all heard the man. Hoopseen.com. Make sure you're checking that out. And to get any tips, that's at Justin D. Young on Twitter, or hit me up at _A_Smith on Twitter. We want to know where y'all are heading out, man. Just because season hasn't started, I mean, we stopped. We're still running and rolling, man. We're still running and rolling. Okay, that wraps it up, JY. That's pretty much episode number 19, man. Any closing remarks from you? Anything you know needs to keep in mind?
Preview. We're all over the place, man. If you're in the Southeast, you're a coach. And again, I say it every week, man. If you want us to really get a good feel for the player, go to our preview camp. It's our best opportunity for you to get to know us, for us to get to know you, about your work ethic, about your competitiveness. I'm on a competitive point of view right now. If you ain't a dog, I ain't with you, man. And so like, that's the best way that we can really figure out who wants to compete, who wants to get better. Those are designed to see who can compete right away as a freshman. It's called the preview camp because it's a preview to what college practice is like. And if you aren't winning in practice in college, you ain't playing in college. It's that simple. So anyways, if you want to get a chance, we're going to be all over the place. We actually have a camp now. HoopSeen W, Alexis Moore is leading that charge for our first ever girls camp that we're running. We've got a great elite middle school camp also going on. And we've got camps in Georgia, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, the Carolinas. I'm probably forgetting somewhere else, but go to hoopseen.com/events and get yourself locked in for the preview camps.
Oh, hoopseen.com/events. That's the site to go to. And hey, like JY just said, I can back it up. I've witnessed kids help develop their story and really progress their high school careers and ultimately their college careers by starting their stories in our preview camps. A great way for players, you all, to be able to get your stories, and parents, a great way for your players to start their stories and gain valuable instruction. Use this time wisely, man. Set yourself up for success during the 2021-2022 school year. JY, that wraps it up, brother. As always, man, I appreciate you, dog. I know being in Arizona, man, it's not like being here in Georgia. So, you know.
Come on out, man. Plenty of room for you out here.
Oh my gosh, man. Whatever, man. Whatever. We miss our guy, Justin Young, but he's doing great things out there in Phoenix. So, JY, to you, man, we salute you. Everyone hanging out with us for episode number 19. Thank you for tuning in today. This is Just a Minute. As always, I'm your HoopSeen host, Austin Smith, and the man next to me on the screen is the man with the plan. That's our editor-in-chief here at HoopSeen.com, Justin Young. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We look forward to seeing you guys very soon.